Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 86 F's to Give podcast. I'm your host, Al, and if you are new here, 86 F's to Give is a reference to the food industry where when they run out of something in the kitchen, they yell 86 French fries, meaning they're all out of French fries. So obviously here we are running out of our F's to give about what people think of us, what we think they think about us, and just kind of going after our goals without any fears. And so each episode we 86 something new to kind of help us be the best versions of ourselves, to not care what people think, all the things. If you are new here, thank you for joining. And if you are an avid listener, you mean the world to me. And if you're someone that pops in and out, I love you just as much. So welcome. Thank you. Welcome back. All the things. Yeah, today we are going to be 86ing negative self-talk. And I'd say this is something that I think we all just kind of naturally do at some point in our lives. And it doesn't help that there's such unrealistic standards for beauty, for talent, for intelligence in society that we all just kind of think we need to be at. And when we're not, it's really easy to kind of talk negative about yourself. It's definitely something that I think we all kind of go through, and maybe at different stages in our lives, it's more, we're more like susceptible to it, just based on the kind of the immaturity levels and not being confident and, not realizing it's something that maybe we need to work on until, post college or something. And you're like, wait, I don't really want to be talking so poorly about myself all the time. So definitely different stages of our lives, but it's definitely something that everyone struggles with at some point or another. And if you don't, that is amazing. Truly, truly amazing. And we all are striving to be like you. But I think probably most people have let a negative thought kind of creep into their mind at some point, whether it be about their body, about something they think they can't do, some goal they can't achieve, or, if they made a mistake, calling themselves an idiot. I am guilty of that one. Just things like just negative things, being really hard on yourselves unnecessarily. I think we've all done it, right? I did want to point out too that I think it can be a range, kind of a spectrum of like the levels of intensity that people do this at. So like sometimes it's like, okay, I like spell something wrong and I'm like, oh, idiot. Like maybe that's not like the worst thing I could have thought about myself. Definitely not the best, but like it's just like a passing thought that I like say out loud. But then there's times where, maybe I'm looking in the mirror and I don't like something that I see and I'm like really nasty to myself about it. Like that, I feel like maybe takes that level of intensity up a notch. And I think different people do different levels of it, right? Like some people kind of fall into that first category where they're just like, oh, like so silly of me, like whatever, like I know better, idiot, right? And it's like, okay, like that's not super harmful, but over time it will be. But then there's other people where it's like every single day they wake up and just think so negatively about themselves. And so obviously I'm doing a 30-minute podcast episode of my experiences and my thoughts, so I will not be able to touch on all of the different ranges and the different situational things that could happen with negative self-talk. But I am going to break it down in kind of like three main categories, which I'll get into, that I think can kind of like take bits and pieces from each one of those things to kind of pertain to any level of negative self-talk, hopefully. I also wanted to give a little disclaimer for if you're somebody that knows me and speaks to me often or hears me talk about myself often, you might think I'm a little bit of a hypocrite for doing this episode, but it's something that I'm working on too. And I say that in literally every episode. Like I am not the most positive self-talker all the time and perfect at everything that I talk about on here. But having these conversations kind of just brings that awareness. And I think it does for other people too. Even I get texts sometimes like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I like said this thing that's like probably detrimental to myself or to others, but it's just kind of this phrase that, society uses. And, once you kind of called it out on the podcast, I've been more aware of it. And that's kind of the whole goal, right? We just want to start the awareness and start making, your gears turn a little differently in your head before you say something, or even after you say something, realizing, hey, I didn't actually mean it. Like that's not what I meant. Let me kind of reword it in a way that is more accurate to how I'm feeling. And so I love that some people are kind of having the podcast or things that I say on here be little reminders to how they want to speak to themselves or others, or, just things that they want to do differently, that is really, really cool to me. So yeah, I am not being a hypocrite by doing this episode. I am also working on it along with everybody else. It's extremely natural and human nature to kind of have those negative thoughts pop into our heads, but we're going to talk a little bit about what to do once they do. And so, like I hinted at earlier, there's 3 kind of main areas I want to talk about, and it's first saying I can't blank, adding anything in there. And obviously I'm not talking about like I can't time travel, I can't fly, I can't go to the moon. Like, okay, obviously we're not doing those things. Humans physically cannot do those things. But I'm talking about like, I used to say all the time that I literally couldn't read like books. Obviously I can read words, but like I could not sit down and read a book. I used to say that all the time. And guess who's read 4 books this year? Okay. So never say never, never say can't. But no, it's like just things like saying like, oh, I could never do that, I can't do that. That's kind of the first category we're going to dive into. And then I want to talk about talking poorly about our physical appearances, because that stems from like levels of insecurity and like a lack of confidence. So I want to talk about that because I think that's something especially women, but all people struggle with. And then I also want to talk about self-deprecating humor for a quick second at the end. And then we'll talk about kind of what to do once those negative thoughts pop into our heads, because it is inevitable at times, just kind of how we're wired in today's society. So first one, saying that you can't do something. And I think this like just kind of like comes out of our mouths when like you see somebody do something really well, or there's something that you want to do, but you kind of want to like beat other people to the punch, and before you even try, say like, oh, I know I can't do this, but like I'm going to try. You're setting yourself and everyone else up to like not be disappointed by saying you can't do something. But when you say that out loud, you're like almost 100% of the time not going to be able to do it, right? Because like you already have zero confidence in yourself. And so back to my example of saying, oh, I can't read. I literally used to go around saying that, and that's simply not true. It just isn't true, right? Like I learned how to read. I could sit down and read a book if I wanted to. What I really meant was that I really struggle to focus and comprehend what I'm reading. And some books just are harder to read than others based on what they're about. You know, like that is what I really meant, right? Like I could read the words and get through the book. It might take me 6 months, but I could do that. Saying you can't do something that you can do or could work up to doing is only protecting yourself from your pride almost for when you inevitably like don't succeed the first time you try doing something. And I don't think that's like a good enough reason to say you can't do something, right? Like I think being realistic about where you are and your goals and things that you want to do is huge, right? We talk about setting realistic goals all the time on here. And it reminds me of a TikTok trend, or just a sound that's going around, is like this girl talking about the phrase, it'll happen when you least expect it. And she's like, why wouldn't I expect it? Like, why wouldn't I expect good things to happen to me? Why wouldn't I expect to be able to achieve said goal? Why wouldn't I expect someone to walk into my life and be a good partner to me? You know, why wouldn't I expect to get good grades? Why wouldn't I expect to get a job that I really want? Why wouldn't I expect, you know, to have good things happen to me? And that's kind of where this reminds me of, because when you're saying you can't do it, it means you don't expect yourself to be able to do it. And that's like really detrimental to your mental health and your confidence, right? And so again, being more realistic with the wording that you use is, you know, in cheerleading, I feel like back when I was a cheerleader, we would say like, oh, I can't do a back handspring. And they'd be like, well, you can't do one yet. So that's something you could do if you want to slowly transition out of saying you can't do something. Well, I can't do it yet, but I'm trying, right? I still don't love that because you're still saying that you can't do something, right? But I think to be more realistic with the wording is like just not even saying that you're unable to do something. Say something I really want to be able to do in the future is a backflip, or something I really want to be able to do in the future is sit down and read a whole book and comprehend it and really enjoy it. And, you know, kind of thinking of ways you can go about doing that. Or, you know, something I'm working towards is blank. And so you're not even saying those negative words, you know, can't, or I suck at this, or I'm unable to do this. Like you're not even putting those thoughts into your brain because they're not true, right? Why would you put them into your brain? And like I said, it is kind of a coping mechanism and setting yourself up to like not be disappointed. And it is also more so setting other people up to not be disappointed, or like laugh at you when you like thought you could do something, but then you end up not being successful the very first time you try it. I think it's a lot of stemming from a pride thing, like we just talked about. But I think it's okay to like have a little confidence and be like, okay, like I know maybe I'm not the best at this right now, but it's something that I want to be good at, and I'm going to keep trying, and I'm not afraid to let people see me trying. We talked about that last episode. Like it's okay to be in the trying stage and just kind of exist here while I figure out how to do this thing that I really want to do. And that is okay. And so the next one I want to kind of talk about is talking poorly about our physical appearances. And this is something that obviously, from my experience, I know that women really struggle with, just because of the beauty standards that are thrusted upon us by just scrolling on social media or watching TV or, walking outside and seeing billboards and magazines and advertisements and all kinds of things that just have the most like conventionally attractive, beautiful women on there. And it's hard when you look at those things and you don't see people that look like you to want to be, positive about what you look like, right? Like I get why this would be a difficult thing to do. I first want to say that literally every single human being is just like so uniquely beautiful and wonderful and amazing, and not just for their physical appearances, but for everything that they are. Not that you need me to tell you that, just felt compelled to say that, right? That is the bottom line here, right? And if no one has told you recently, you are beautiful, right? You are just absolutely glowing and existing and crushing life, and that is beautiful. And then next, I want to say, if you are somebody that doesn't see people that look like you in the media, on social media, on TV shows, and I think Hollywood is getting better at putting people of all different shapes and sizes and sexualities and genders and backgrounds and religions and all of those things in shows now and TV and things like that. But it's still like, we still know what the standards are, right? And if people, a lot of times it's how those people are represented too. Like, maybe there is a plus size person in the show, but is that like their whole personality trait? Are they being represented in that way? Or are they just like a beautiful person that happens to be plus size? You know what I mean? So it is still a work in progress always, in how people are represented in the media. But if you are somebody that doesn't see somebody that looks like you and doesn't really align with how people are represented in the media, I like to take that as a challenge and be like, even though I interact with maybe 10 people on a daily basis, I get to represent people that look like me in my bubble in a positive way. And I think that's such a cool thing to kind of take on, that responsibility. And it's not even like you go around telling people that that's what you're doing. That's just what you're doing by being who you are, right? Like all of us are representing people that look like us and share similar traits as us as we move through the world. Because unfortunately, people get generalized with groups of people that look like them or act like them or are the same identity as them. And so, if you see somebody representing a group or a piece of your identity that doesn't kind of resonate with you, you get to say, hey, I'm going to represent that area differently and better, in my opinion, in my little bubble, even though it's not on TV or on Netflix for thousands and millions of people to see. You still get to represent people that look and think and act and move like you for whoever gets to interact with you. And that is still so cool and beautiful. And this reminds me of a conversation that I had around Black History Month with some of the Black coaches at the school that I work at a few years back. We're talking about like, actually I posed the question of like, do you feel like you got hired as like a diversity hire, like kind of were maybe given an extra consideration because you're Black, right? And they wanted to bring in more diversity. Like obviously they think you're qualified enough for the job, but like, do you ever think like maybe, you got that role because of what you look like? And which is really a messed up way of thinking, because that's how it has been for the opposite people, like non-people of color for ages and ages and ages. Like they just get the job because they're not Black or not a person of color, right? So it is kind of like unfortunate that we even have to think like this now. But once I posed that question, one of our coaches was like, yeah, well, even if that was the case, which I don't think it is, but even if that was, like, how cool that we get to be people that represent people of color in sports. And not only people of color, but women of color and, you know, all the other things that we are, right? How cool is it that we get to represent and kind of be people's perception of said group of people in this little bubble? And it's like, it is really cool to think of like taking that on as a challenge and a personal responsibility of like, I'm going to represent people that look like me in the best way I know how. And I'm going to continue to improve that perception of me as I move through the world and, you know, up in my career and just professionally and personally and in every area of my life. I want to represent me and whatever pieces of identity that I present outwardly. I want that to come across in a positive way. Like, I don't want to be the reason that people look down on Black women, right? Like, that would eat me alive, right? Like, I don't want to be the reason that people look down on just women in general or have a negative perception on women or whatever it is. Like, that is the last thing that I want to be. So I take a personal responsibility to represent myself first and foremost, but, you know, others that share similar identities as me with grace and with pride. And so I want to kind of share that mindset there. I think it's a really awesome way to kind of move through the world. I'm just thinking of like, not only am I representing myself, I'm representing my family, I'm representing where I work, I'm representing people that look like me, that share pieces of my identity with me, you know, and taking that extra level of responsibility kind of shapes how you move through the world. And I just think that's really cool. So sorry to kind of ramble on and say the same things over and over again, but I just am really passionate about that whole thing, obviously. And so I hope that resonates with you guys as well. Obviously, I also want to say there's so many things you can do to kind of shape your confidence of your physical appearance, right? Like, there's the classic standing in the mirror and like standing in the mirror naked and just looking at your body and telling yourself that you love your body, right? Over and over and over again. Finding places that you naturally do love. Maybe you really love your hair, but somewhere else on your body you don't, you're still working on loving. Talk about the things that you do love first and just focus on that and, you know, build your confidence in the areas that you are kind of already confident in, right? And then you can kind of move into, you know, I wish my hips looked a little different, and kind of then shaping that into being like, well, I'm a woman and our hips shift and move with our body because we have a menstrual cycle or because we can bear children, and how beautiful that is, and kind of shift that thinking, that, you know, cycle of negative thinking into being like, oh, I actually love this about me because I get to potentially bring life into this world because of this piece of me, and how amazing and cool and beautiful that is, right? So whatever part of your body, whether it's your feet, you know, my mom always says like, you know, as you get older and your maybe feet get a little more beat up and your toes are looking whatever, like, they have these feet and toes and ankles and legs have carried us through however many years of our lives, you know? And so whatever it is that you're insecure about, like, there is a way to reshift your thinking and reframe those negative thoughts into being positive. And I know it's hard. I know it is hard. I'm not going to sit here and say that it is easy, but we have to kind of take those first steps in shifting our mindset. And when you say things over and over and over again about yourself, you will start to believe them, I promise. So yeah, those are kind of all my thoughts on the negative self-talk around our physical appearance and kind of pieces of our identity. And then I wanted to quickly touch on the whole self-deprecating humor thing. I feel like that is like trendy these days almost, and is something that comedians do a lot, or TikTokers or YouTubers. And it's just something that, again, kind of is like a pride thing, and kind of you can make yourself the butt of the joke before someone else does, or you kind of get to the punchline before someone else can. And half the time, people aren't even thinking of those things that you're making fun of yourself for. So it just becomes a place for you to welcome people to be negative about yourself too. I just think it's a really toxic way of making people laugh. I think there's ways to be funny that, one, aren't harmful to other people, and two, aren't harmful to yourself. I also think that self-deprecating humor kind of like puts you in this dopamine cycle of, okay, you say something negative about yourself in a funny way, and then the whole room laughs, and then you get this rush from making everybody laugh. And then that's all you're focused on, not necessarily the fact that you just said a really mean thing about yourself in front of people and outwardly, and are inviting all these people to kind of laugh and joke about this thing that you probably are insecure about. So then you just get trapped in this cycle of, one, you're inviting people to now comment and laugh at something that you aren't a fan of about yourself. Two, you just got this rush of good feelings of dopamine and energy from people laughing at your joke, right? But really what you're doing is training your body to enjoy making fun of yourself, right? You're training your body to feel good about being mean to yourself. And that is like such a brain twister, because like we shouldn't feel proud of being negative about ourselves and rude to ourselves, right? Like, do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, I think it's like, and I'm guilty of it too. Like, I will make fun of myself for my food palette and how I'm so picky and don't really enjoy many like things that I would call like adult or mature food. Although I've been so much better than I used to be, but I still will jokingly say I eat like a 5-year-old, because I do, and that is okay. But you know, saying things like just so mean about yourself and like your appearance or things that you do, or making fun of something that you said or whatever, and then allowing people, not only allowing, but like encouraging them to laugh at that or make fun of it with you. And then now you've kind of set it up where they can kind of pile on and like add to it. And then you get kind of hurt and you're like, wait, well, I can't be mad at them because I just invited them to make fun of me about this thing that I'm insecure about. And like, yeah, it's just such a brain tester and teaser, because it's like, why am I doing this? And again, it's a pride thing, right? Like, you want to make yourself the butt of the joke before other people can. But I think a better way is if somebody makes you the butt of the joke, call them out, right? Which is so hard, but being like, hey, I didn't sign up to be the butt of the joke here. I don't think that's very nice. Maybe let's talk about anybody else that's not in this room, or, you know, maybe make a general statement and not so targeted towards me, or maybe let's not make fun of people to begin with. You know, there's so many ways you can kind of shift the conversation in a way that's not harmful to other people or yourself. And so, yeah, it just kind of gets you stuck in this thing, and I don't love it. And, you know, I've done it where I've called myself out for something and kind of made people laugh and made myself the punchline before other people could. And then I just regret it instantly, because like I said, other people pile on, not fun. Then they will bring it up later, you know, as something that they think that I think is funny, not fun. And then my body is just like so confused, because this is something that I'm insecure about and I'm working on loving about myself. But now I feel good when people make fun of it, because I'm getting that dopamine from people laughing, or I'm getting dopamine from making others laugh, or, you know, so it's just weird. And I don't love it. And that's my thoughts on that. And I had to talk about it in this episode, because it's just something that we all kind of do, and I feel like has been more popular, you know, in recent years, and it's not my fave, okay? I will say that. And so now some things that we can do once we have those negative thoughts pop into our head, and we talked a little bit about this already, is the reframing, right? Reframing is the answer to everything, I'm starting to realize, and you guys are probably picking up on it too, because I talk about reframing in every single episode. But it's the key to protecting your peace, right? You don't have to just let yourself think these negative things. And a lot of times it's your anxiety or your depression or your mental health, struggles saying these negative things to you. It's not like what you actually think about yourself. And so that's the first place I want to start, is when it pops into your head being like, okay, I'm actually in like a bad mental health state right now. That's not Ali Cucinato talking to Ali Cucinato. That's Ali's anxiety talking to Ali. And that's different, right? That's not me and what I actually think. That is the little whatever menaces in my mind that are trying to feed into, me being down already. And that's not cool, right? So you're allowed to literally, like, sometimes I will literally stand in the mirror and like, I'll be having these negative thoughts and I'm just like, that's not true. That's not true. I don't think that. And I would like yell at myself in the mirror and just be like, that's not how I feel. That's not true. And just kind of remind myself over and over again that like, that is not the case, right? That is not actually what I think. And that's so helpful because not only like out yelling at yourself out loud, it doesn't even allow you to like have those thoughts because you're talking now. Like you can't think something else while you're talking. So that's like an immediate like snap yourself out of it moment. But also it trains yourself when you have those thoughts. It's like, okay, I know like real me is going to yell at anxiety me if I have these thoughts. So it kind of trains your body over time and your mind over time to be like, I don't need to have these thoughts because I know that they're not true, right? I don't even need to go down that or allow them to even pop into my mind or take up real estate in my mind because I know they're not true. So that's like where I would start. And then if they continue, as they will to pop into your mind, you have to do the reframing. And I like to do this with writing because it visually helps me see. So I will write out like whatever negative thought is popping into my mind. Say it's, I don't know, I love that I'm struggling so hard to think of a negative thing about myself. I mean, come on. No, I'm trying to think of one that I want to share with you all. We'll just say like, I'm really bad at math. Like I'm really not smart when it comes to math. That is our negative thought. That just keeps popping into my mind. Or for me, spelling, okay? Or like slowing down and not making mistakes. There's tons of things, okay? Whatever the example is that you're thinking. Write the negative thing down and then cross out words in the sentence and change them to different words to reframe the sentence. So unless it needs a full start over, you can just write a new sentence under it. But sometimes there's just a quick little shift in one or two words in the sentence that can make it into a more positive sentence. And I'm struggling to come up with a good example that's not like really, really mean about myself. So you guys get the point, right? Writing out the sentence and then crossing out words and rewording them, or if the sentence needs to fully be scrapped and rewritten in a way that needs to be, that will be more positive, go for it. But writing it out is so helpful to see like the negative thought and being like, oh, that like doesn't feel good to like write that down or see that. And then rewriting it in a more positive way and being like, okay, I can think this whenever this negative thought pops into my mind. I'm going to immediately think this after. And I know it like sounds silly, but like really you're training your brain on how to think and how to treat yourself, right? How to feel about yourself. You have to train it because like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, like society and businesses and all these things, they feed into our insecurities so that we buy products to fix said insecurity, or so that we watch perfect, in air quotes, people online that we want to we strive to be like. So they're not going to put like, you know what I mean? Like it's everywhere. It's inundated in our daily lives, like to just see things that make you feel bad about yourself. So that is where we have to retrain and relearn and rethink about how we actually feel about ourselves. Like, is something making me feel this way about myself? Or do I actually think that my nose is ugly, right? Or am I just seeing all these people get nose jobs on TikTok with noses that originally kind of look like mine, but they want to do something different with their nose. And so now I'm feeling all of a sudden like I need a nose job, but I had never thought I wanted a nose job before. Like, is it something that that's being kind of tossed onto me to think this way? Or is it something that I actually feel? And just kind of calling yourself out and thinking about, where these negative feelings are stemming from. Because if it's like something that like you actually want to be better at and you actually like have a goal towards and something that you really don't love about yourself that you're trying to fix, like, okay, I understand like being realistic about that and saying maybe, I'm not the best at this right now, but I want to be better at it, whatever. But if it's something that like society is just telling us that we should hate about ourselves, like I'm not in on just hopping on that train and being like, oh yeah, I hate my face too because society says I should. I hope this all made sense. I was kind of rambling on because I have so many thoughts and I'm trying to like reel them in to make sense in these different categories, but like it's so hard because there's just like so many different ways, and I was trying to like kind of keep the episode light and not talk about like some really, really dark thoughts that people could have about themselves, but like you can use these same tactics for those even darker thoughts. But also like, don't be afraid to ask for help. If your brain is just like not giving up on these negative thoughts and it's just relentless, like that's maybe something that like a therapist can help with or medicine could help with. Which you guys don't need me to tell you that, but I just felt that needed to be said as well. A little disclaimer, like you don't just have to like try to reframe and be like, oh, it's not working, like, and just go on about your life. Like there's ways to work through these, and maybe sometimes that's like taking more serious measures, which is totally normal, and there's a whole episode on here about going to therapy. So you should absolutely invest in yourself and your mental health in whatever ways that need to be done. So yeah, I think those are all my thoughts on negative self-talk. Well, I have a lot of thoughts, but those are the ones I could kind of gather up today in a concise-ish way for you all. I guess we will restock affirmations in this episode. I haven't talked about affirmations on here in a while, and I also haven't really been practicing or writing or saying my affirmations in a while. So I feel like this is a good episode to just mention positive affirmations, positive self-talk, whether it's in the mirror or you're writing them or you say them out loud to yourself in the car on the way to work, whatever it is, find something that you can kind of latch onto. There are so many awesome quotes and affirmations that exist. I love some like, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I do not miss out on what is meant for me. Those are some general ones. But if you need to have an affirmation about an insecurity of yours that you're trying to work on, like throw that in there. That would be perfect for this kind of to help work on this. So yeah, that's what we're restocking today. Some positive affirmations, positive self-talk. But yeah, if no one's told you recently, I love you, I'm proud of you, you're beautiful, and you're kicking life's butt. And keep 86ing whatever you are trying to 86, whatever goals you're trying to work on. Keep crushing, working on your goals, okay? Because I'm sure you are. That's all I have for you today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.